5 years ago, Chen teleported to a world of immortal cultivation. This is a world with the same old inability to cultivate without spiritual roots, the same old system. He never imagined this would happen to him. He observes some chickens given as gifts by the system and imagines that the worst thing about this world is that he cannot get stronger until he completes 1,000 missions. After all, a task is a trivial mission in life. The system's rewards are good for a comfortable life, but in truth, the protagonist is dissatisfied with these gifts. What he really wanted was an air conditioner to cool down while resting. He sits down dejectedly, and at this moment, the system announces that there is a new mission. He tries to guess whether he will need to make toys for children or if there's another couple fighting again. However, the mission is nothing more than to go to the mountain sect. He gets furious with the system, asking if it even knows what the immortal sect that governs the cities is. After all, he spent 5 years learning about everything except that he cannot cultivate. So how will he enter as a mortal? However, he becomes pensive, as he is apparently being given an opportunity to finally become strong. The system makes it clear, saying, "A man must be strong. The deadline is 3 months. If not completed, the host will be exterminated." Now everything makes sense. The protagonist stretches his body and says he can finally forget all the strange jobs he has done until now, like delivering babies or even making toys. This time it should be worth it. He smiles and says he doesn't believe it and probably won't be able to handle it. He walks through the mountains until he makes a small pause and wonders where the hell the mountain sect is. The system appears, informing him that men must be self-sufficient. This irritates Chen, as he didn't count on the system anyway. He sits down frustrated, thinking he could spend months searching and in the end, find nothing, as these immortal sects are usually well hidden. So he needs at least some clues. He thinks that something could fall from the sky to enlighten his life. He says this but doesn't notice a scream coming from above. It's a girl falling from the sky, desperate. He finally hears the scream and gets up scared, as there really is a girl falling from the sky. He tries to catch the girl in mid-air but misses, and she falls straight to the ground. The protagonist watches the girl, thinking she is very beautiful and probably a cultivator, as she can fall from the sky. At least that's what he thinks. The girl starts moaning and finally opens her eyes. She finds herself face to face with the protagonist, who is poking her body with a stick. After all, he wasn't sure if she was alive. However, the girl backs away, thinking that the man was trying to abuse her body. Chen gets worried about this and asks her not to misunderstand, as he didn't do anything to her. Zhao Shui is surprised by something she noticed and immediately kneels, asking for the senior's help. Chen doesn't understand why she called him senior. At this moment, several people teleport to the location surrounding the two. He gets worried, looking around, as apparently that girl was being pursued, and then asks her to flee, as several men have probably arrived for her. However, all the girl can do at the moment is cry, making the protagonist call her useless. He then turns to all those men, imagining there is nothing he can do after all. How could he defeat so many immortal cultivators? Immediately, all the men kneel, apologizing to the senior for the disturbance. He is completely confused, wondering if all cultivators are like this, enjoying kneeling for no reason. At this moment, back at Chen's house, a chicken is asking when its master will return. She says that she is obviously a phoenix, but for some reason, she has become a chicken, and is therefore embarrassed. She is worried because she saw her master packing several things as if he were moving. A fish appears, and says that it really doesn't know what happened, as he is a dragon, but is in the form of a fish in that well. Looking at the tree, they comment that the kitchen knife screams every day, saying it is hungry and thirsty and wants to kill people. However, it is uncertain if it will ever be set free. The chicken insists that she is sure of it. At least, if the master doesn't let it cut people, it won't dare to do so. Xiao Shui is pensive because when she first looked at Chen, she felt that he was not an ordinary person at all. One of the kneeling men thinks the pressure there is incredibly powerful, and for a second, they thought they would catch the girl without any problems, but they never imagined they would encounter such a presence. Extremely terrified, the man imagines that just looking at the man in front of him feels like his soul will be annihilated. He felt the terror emanating from that man's aura. Chen starts to say something, but the man immediately begins to shout, saying they will do anything ordered, even leaving immediately. The protagonist finds this too exaggerated. However, he stops to reflect that these people are probably good. Embarrassed, he asks all the men to leave. He says this, thinking he needs to look good. Immediately, all the men start running at full speed, thanking him for his kindness in letting them leave. The girl runs and hugs the protagonist, thanking him for saving her. He responds that he did nothing and that she misunderstood, as he is just a mortal and not a senior. The girl, very embarrassed, imagines that a mortal would not be able to scare 4 experts at the Jin Dawn stage like that. However, the senior must have his reasons for saying that. She thinks this and immediately says that he is right. He really is just a mortal. The protagonist can clearly see in the girl's expression that she doesn't believe him. He then asks if her name is really Xiao Shui, and if he is not mistaken, that is the name of the Holy Maiden of the Mountain Sect. The girl is surprised and asks if he really knows her. Chen responds that yes, and he needs to travel to her sect, so they could travel together. She is happy and says she wants to go with him, and points out that the sect is in the other direction. She says this, imagining that she had no idea the sect was connected to such a powerful being. The two smile at each other. Time passes and she continues smiling at him, making him embarrassed. He explains to the girl that, as he said earlier, he is a mortal, so he can only walk, and thus he doesn't know how to fly. She says she understands, and will walk with him without any problem. Time passes, and they decide to take a break to eat. Xiao Shui is sitting, gathering energy to try to control the water. However, she notices that it is getting a little out of control until all the water falls back into the pond. The water also falls on her as she laments that she has only failed so far, unable to succeed despite trying for several months. Meanwhile, the protagonist is frustrated because he imagined he would be flown to the sect, but instead, they are walking step by step, which is problematic. Suddenly he turns around because Xiao Shui is calling for him, and he sees her all wet with that beautiful sensual body. She says she has a favor to ask. She remains silent for a moment until the protagonist asks if her problem is related to water. Xiao Shui is surprised and replies that it is. He just thinks she needs to dry her clothes first, as a gentleman like him finds it difficult to look at her with her body all wet. He observes a bit more and notices that Xiao Shui's body is simply incredible. He definitely can't keep looking for long. The protagonist averts his gaze after admiring that beautiful body. She, on the other hand, thinks that the senior master is very observant, noticing that she is having difficulties due to a bottleneck. She approaches him and says that this breakthrough is too important for her, and she even sought guidance from her father and grandfather, but they are no longer around. Thus, he is the only one who can help her. Chen is extremely embarrassed by the double meaning and responds that he is just a foreigner and can't get involved in her private matters. The girl is frustrated, so he offers her a drink to warm up and later decide what to do. He also explains that cultivators like her have many means to achieve advancement. She says it's a pity he can't help her. She says this but feels a strange sensation when drinking the beverage. She finds it strange, as the senior master is an immortal, but doesn't want to meddle in mortal affairs. She starts to feel as if her body is in the water. She reflects that the protagonist meant not to observe the water and wait for enlightenment, but rather to be with the water to be enlightened. She feels she has finally broken through and immediately kneels, thanking the protagonist for the precious advice and saying she will never forget this act of kindness. He is completely confused and starts scratching his head, wondering what he did after all. Time passes, and the two finally arrive at the mountain sect. The protagonist enters the house and says it really is a great sect. He also never imagined that Xiao Shui is the daughter of the sect master. He thinks they are entering through the back door, and that even the handyman needs qualifications to enter through the front door. Xiao Shui goes to the sect master to explain what happened and asks why such a powerful person wants to join their sect. Qing Xuan, an elder of the sect, also finds it strange that such a powerful master wants to join their sect. He asks Xiao Shui if she is making some kind of joke. She responds to her father and uncle that she is not lying and is also surprised by this. However, it was Chen himself who said he wanted to join the sect and is even waiting outside. The sect master asks his daughter to say no more, as she has never seen how difficult the outside world is, and very likely, she was deceived by an unorthodox cultivator. He says this and starts to get up, saying he will study the treasures later, as he needs to deal with the liar outside. Xiao Shui tries to stop her father, but he doesn't believe anything and just says he wants to see who was crazy enough to lie to his daughter. The sect leader steps outside and is astonished by what he sees. He asks his daughter if she said that man's body was emitting a lot of qi. She responds affirmatively and asks if he can see it. The leader looks at the protagonist and says that it can't even be called qi emission. Definitely, it's as if that body is the purest qi that exists. Chen observes a man approaching and imagines it must be the sect master. He raises his hand, thinking he should greet him politely. However, the sect leader bows down and apologizes, saying he didn't know that immortal ancestors were present, and if he had known, he wouldn't have committed the sin of making him wait. A sin worthy of death. Chen is confused by all this and explains that he is just a mortal, so he could never let the sect leader bow before him. The protagonist, still panicked, cannot understand why cultivators insist on bowing or even calling others master. The girl explains to her father that Chen cultivates his mind with a mortal restraint, so they should not talk much about it to avoid irritating him. The leader looks at Chen again and imagines he cannot think of that person as a mortal at all. He tells the protagonist that he is pleased to know he would like to join the sect. Chen bows and says that it is indeed his wish. He also says that if possible he would like to live in the sect, even if it is as a handyman. The leader shouts no, and his daughter asks if he is crazy to say that. The sect master looks down, while the protagonist still doesn't understand anything, thinking everyone there is more anxious than he is. Yunhai says that right now he will be resigning as the sect master, and that this position will go to Chen. The protagonist doesn't understand anything, imagining that this guy is definitely crazy. He responds that no, he definitely couldn't be the sect master. The sect leader looks at his daughter and thinks he was careless. After all, that position is not good enough for someone as powerful as him. Yunhai coughs and says that if that's the case, it won't be so formal then. Chen responds that yes, it doesn't need to be so formal. He says this but thinks that he will probably be expelled now, and the mission will be all ruined. However, the sect leader says he has made a decision. He will remove his father from the position of sect ancestor, and from now on, Chen will be the sole ancestor of the entire village. He is frustrated, as it is too difficult to communicate with immortal cultivators. It seems they are all crazy. He says that although he cannot cultivate, he has heard about the sect ranks, which are handyman, outer disciples, inner disciples, seniors, elders, pavilion masters, and finally, the highest rank, the sect leader. He explains that he is a mere mortal, not qualified even to be a disciple, so how on earth would he accept an ancestor position? Then he has an idea, thinking he needs to find a way to persuade everyone there to complete his mission. Yunhai shouts that it is decided, Chen will be the sect ancestor, and moreover, it is rude to leave him standing for so long, so they must proceed to the hall immediately. The protagonist can't believe the absurdities he is hearing. Xiao Shui pulls her father and says that her uncle Qing Xuan is in the corridor, and they have the same attitude, so as he doesn't know the current situation, he might end up being disrespectful to the powerful Chen. The sect leader says he really forgot about that and immediately runs off, asking his daughter to stay with the protagonist. Chen, not understanding anything, asks Xiao Shui if her father had some internal emergency. She, embarrassed, replies that he probably did. Yunhai runs into the house and finds Qing Xuan sitting. Immediately he shouts that they need to talk. The elder asks if the liar has already been expelled. The master explains that the power of that senior is surreal, and he is on his way. So he pleads with the elder not to be disrespectful, adding that this man is now the sect's ancestor. Qing Xuan can't believe all this, and wonders if even the sect master has been deceived. He gets up, saying he doesn't want to hear anything more, as he will see with his own eyes what this man can do. He barely starts walking and immediately panics. He can feel the powerful aura emanating from that man. Witnessing this, he kneels and bows his head to the ground, apologizing for not welcoming such a great master sooner. Yunhai bursts into laughter, having warned about this. The elder can't believe the luck of this man who has reached such a level of existence. Meanwhile, Chen wonders how much these cultivators like to kneel. He asks himself if this is normal courtesy among cultivators, or what it means. Not understanding anything, he asks if he should also kneel. The elder and Xiao Shui immediately grab him, saying that someone like him should never do that. At that moment, a small ball falls from the elder's body to the ground. The protagonist bends down, picks it up, and asks where he got it. Qing Xuan explains that his disciples found it on the way. It seems unknown and the interior is hollow, but despite all efforts, it couldn't be opened. Chen explains that this so-called unknown material is just ordinary wood, and inside, there's nothing good, just food. The elder is impressed to hear this. They both ask if Chen can see what's inside. He tosses the ball in the air and replies that he doesn't have that kind of ability. Time passes, and the protagonist is thoughtful, saying that making toys for children is a simple task. He holds a knife and says he found good wood to make Lubin locks. He notices that the mechanism seems broken, so it looks like he'll have to open it another way. He pulls out his knife, which starts emitting enormous energy. The power is so great that Yunhai and his daughter feel as if their bodies are being cut. Frightened, she asks what the hell happened. Her father responds that it is a terrifying power, that even the most powerful treasures in the world do not come close to this level. They look at Chen wielding that knife and say that it is definitely a legendary artifact. The knife hits the ball squarely. The elder, observing from afar, imagines that it was a collision that violates the laws of the world. But in the protagonist's view, he simply managed to cut it. He then turns and asks why everyone is hiding so far from him. The girl asks Chen what that is. He replies that it is just candy, probably a reward for the children when they open their toys. She takes it in her hand and wonders if it really is candy. After all, its spiritual power is very strong. She swallows the candy and starts to feel her body overflow with power, evolving from the first level of pill formation to the 10th level. She runs and grabs the protagonist's hands, saying that not only did he save her life, guide her to break through, but now gave her this chance. She says she has no idea how she could ever repay him for all this. Extremely embarrassed, she says she can give her body to him. He is shocked and deeply embarrassed, looking at how beautiful Xiao Shui's body is, imagining that someone with such a beautiful body is offering it just because of a candy. He thinks she must definitely be on drugs to be saying that. Extremely embarrassed, the protagonist turns away and says he did nothing special, and therefore couldn't accept her beautiful body, not to mention that her father might not agree with it. However, Yunhai says he taught his daughter to be grateful since childhood, so her chastity is the best way to repay such kindness. The protagonist can't believe this, thinking that these issues must have been inherited from her father. He places his hand on her shoulder and says that chastity is not something she should give because of a candy. She clings to his body, thinking that if he really stays in the mountain sect, he will need someone to serve him. She asks to at least let her be his maid. He is surprised to hear this. Xiao Shui makes a sad face and asks if she is so bad that he won't even accept this. He turns and sees that her father agrees, so it seems everything is fine. The elder gets furious and complains to Yunhai, saying that the girl was supposed to become his daughter-in-law, so he wants to get Chen away from her. The sect leader responds to the elder that if he has the skills to do so, then go ahead, not to mention that this is Xiao Shui's own wish. Qing Xuan realizes that this is too diabolical and says the sect master is obviously greedy for Chen's favors. He also thinks that he doesn't know what luck the sect has to keep such a strong god, especially since Xiao Shui not only advanced, but jumped 10 levels in a row. Thus his son has no chance against Chen when it comes to winning that girl's heart. He imagines there is a slight possibility of his son getting involved with this powerful god. The protagonist feels something strange and then looks back, wondering what the elder is thinking, as he felt a strange chill in his body. He places his hand on the girl's head and says he needs to leave first. She grabs him again, saying she will never let him go. He asks her not to hug him, as he can't hold back anymore. He looks at the system while imagining that inexplicably he was pushed into the position of the sect leader's son-in-law, then became an ancestor, and now Xiao Shui has become his maid for no reason. There is definitely not a normal person in that sect. On the other hand, he is happy, because the system is notifying him that the mission to join the mountain sect has been successfully completed. The protagonist takes the opportunity to ask the leader what exactly a sect ancestor does. He responds that it's nothing much, just necessary to do something in case of important decisions or when the sect is facing an unsolvable difficulty. Chen already imagines this is far beyond his capabilities and asks to be taken back, as that is the case. At the request of the great Chen, the leader uses his spell and flies to his residence. The protagonist feels downcast, thinking it's a shame. The sect leader can't believe that even though they flew at the speed of light, arriving in the blink of an eye, probably for Chen's eyes it was as slow as a turtle, so he felt bored. In truth, he was upset because the speed was so fast, and there was no sensation of flying. Anyway, he decides to enter the house and says he will have a cup of tea. Yunhai says it's no problem and will respectfully follow him. Inside, he was relieved because apparently the great Chen didn't blame them for the boring light-speed journey. The sect leader is surprised by the protagonist's residence and says he should arrange a superior residence when he returns to the sect, but Chen says no. He prefers this type of life because he has fish and chickens to raise. They all go to the backyard, and the chicken immediately stares at them. The 3 sect members freeze at the same time. The protagonist asks if something happened for them to stop suddenly. Yunhai responds that everything is fine. He just lost his breath for a moment. They continue observing the chickens, and then notice that Chen is going back into the house. He will prepare some tea while everyone tours the courtyard. The 3 start to get terrified to the point of becoming depressed, thinking that their end has finally come. The elder can't hide how surprised he is to see everything around him. The peach tree is completely surrounded by qi, as well as the fish pond and the chicken pen. Definitely the whole yard has qi everywhere. Xiao Shui, in a panic, asks what kind of treasure those are, as the place where Chen lives is extremely terrifying. Her father responds that they are probably being tested, so they need to hold firm. They observe how grandiose that chicken and fish are, possessing an enormous amount of qi, and imagine that surviving this test will be almost impossible. The girl closes her eyes and starts to struggle to breathe, saying she can't take it anymore. Suddenly, they hear a cough coming from inside the house. This catches the attention of all the animals in the courtyard. The 3 sect members pause for a moment, and then decide it's best to go inside the house to check if Chen is all right. They run to the door and enter, telling Chen they will join him to keep him company. The protagonist turns and asks if they have already toured the courtyard and offers them some freshly made tea. However, he notices something strange. All 3 are completely exhausted. He imagines they were probably exercising in the yard. But still, he doesn't understand, since his yard isn't a playground, so how could they all be so tired? He looks at Xiao Shui's beautiful body and wonders if it could be something else. But he changes his mind since it's none of his business. He just serves the tea and asks everyone to taste it and tell him if they like it. The elder observes the cup and asks what kind of elixir it is. Yunhai responds that he doesn't know, but it shouldn't be inferior to the ancestor's kitchen knife, so they shouldn't handle it rashly. He takes the tea in hand, and the 3 notice an absurd amount of qi floating around the cup. Xiao Shui knows that the spiritual root is the basis of every immortal cultivator, and the level of the root determines the speed and purity of its absorption. She decides to drink, and is immediately shocked. The protagonist is worried about her reaction, and asks if the taste is that bad. The other 2 decide to drink as well, and soon after, all 3 ask for more tea. Chen doesn't understand what their reaction means. Yunhai starts to throw a tantrum, asking for more tea, but unfortunately there aren't enough leaves left. The protagonist asks everyone not to laugh, but since he drank all the water, there is no more water there. He made up a lame excuse this time since he no longer had any tea leaves. However, the elder responds that it's not a problem if the issue is water. He says this while gathering energy in his hand, summoning a bottle of water and saying the problem is solved. Chen gets irritated and orders everyone out of the house immediately. They all leave as he says drinking too much is bad for their health. The 3 reply that they will remember this teaching. They all go for a walk while the protagonist wonders what the heck he taught them this time. He feels relieved that everyone finally left and decides to walk to the city to do some shopping since he's starving. Far away, the sun is scorching. An old man imagines it's a sign of epiphany. This man is the former ancestor of the sect. He thinks that observing how the sun is that day, there's a 60% chance of breaking through the bottleneck. He is focused because to reach the spiritual stage, he can't make any mistakes. He keeps his concentration on the sun, his eyes more focused than ever, imagining he is very close to succeeding. The sun shines brighter and brighter until suddenly he hears a voice calling him, interrupting his entire process. This person says they have great news for him. It's Yunhai, who had good news but noticed the former ancestor seems a little upset. The man begins to unsheath his sword furiously, having had his process interrupted. He charges at the sect leader, saying he has bad news for him. The sect leader's father starts beating him. He is furious because his cultivation base was destroyed at the highest moment of his life. The elder comments to Xiao Shui that her grandfather seems very angry. The man stops when Yunhai shouts for his father to stop. The man makes it clear that this situation is no joke. The sect leader asks him not to be angry, because now they have a veteran who will be able to help him break through with extreme ease. The former ancestor sits down and says the only way that would happen is if an immortal descended to enlighten the earth. He says his excellent cultivation was destroyed by his useless son. Yunhai tells his father it's all true. The man responds that if that's the case, he wants to make a bet. Yunhai says no problem and asks what he will gain if he wins. The elder bets 10,000 spirit stones, as does Xiao Shui. The former elder is surprised by this, since they are betting almost all their net worth. The sect leader challenges his father again, asking what he will bet. He says this, but gets slapped in the face to show more respect. They all head to Chen's house. Upon arrival, Xiao Shui asks her grandfather to speak very carefully. The sect leader says that's right. Under no circumstances can he be rude. Also, Chen lives as if he were immortal. That's how he cultivates his mind, so they can't mention cultivation matters at all. His father can't believe it, thinking it's clearly a lie. He enters the house and immediately feels something strange in his body. Xiao Shui and her father ask what's wrong. The former ancestor is on his knees, imagining that this residence is indeed that of an immortal. He realizes that the pressure alone renders him unable to move. He notices immense power overflowing from the house and wonders what kind of divine existence these things are. At that moment, a spirit flies at full speed toward the old man until the chicken yells for Chopper to stop immediately. With that, Chopper throws a punch, but misses the old ancestor's face. The punch is so powerful that it creates a tornado of power in its direction. Yunhai asks who the heck that person is. The blow nearly hit the old ancestor's face, and they speculate that this level is akin to an ancestral kitchen knife. Chopper tells Phoenix that the old man doesn't seem like a good person and wasn't with the previous group, so it might be interesting to cut him in half. The man is just in shock because that tool, with such a high level of intelligence, is beyond imagination. Moreover, this Chopper called that chicken the king of beasts, Phoenix. The chicken says that the old man seems stupid and it might be contagious. Chopper responds that it makes sense. The man can't believe what kind of place this is. Chopper closes his eyes and returns to being a spirit, telling the former ancestor that if he doesn't behave, he will die soon. He says this and flies back into the house. Murong thanks the chicken for his mercy and says that such great kindness will never be forgotten. Yunhai asks his father if he now believes, and with that, the bets should be off. The old man gets angry, asking what he means by that, and slaps his son's face, saying he almost died, and he's thinking about a bet. Xiao Shui asks her grandfather to calm down. After all, apparently Chen is not home at the moment, so they can ask for his help another time. Soon after, the protagonist arrives home carrying some groceries and sees the 3 sect members again. He wonders why those people are back, and definitely doesn't want to make tea again. He considers that the solution might be to hide, but Xiao Shui looks back and notices the protagonist trying to escape. She yells, saying she was waiting for him and that he's finally back. Chen is frustrated at being discovered and asks why everyone is there again, if there's something he can do for them. The girl points to the side and introduces her grandfather. But the protagonist can't believe that such an important person, the true ancestor of the sect, is on his knees in his yard. He runs to greet such a person, as he can't offend someone so important. Yunhai warns his father that Chen is present and has qi around him, so the first time he sees him, he needs to control himself. The protagonist approaches from behind and places his hand on his shoulder. Murong immediately feels an enormous qi approaching. He is extremely frightened, as it's clear that the qi isn't just around the guy, it's everywhere. Realizing this, he lies prostrate and greets the great Chen. The protagonist panics, saying that this is all a mess, and asks Murong to please get up, as such an important person shouldn't lie prostrate before a mere mortal. The old man notices that the suffocation is gone, so Chen is indeed powerful enough to passively control this immense power. He looks closely at the protagonist and imagines that, as Yunhai mentioned, this great man likes to be treated as if he were a mere mortal. Murong tells the protagonist that he is very generous and that he can call him whatever he wants. He responds that if that's the case, he will just call him old man. He asks everyone to come in since they are there anyway. Everyone is excited to taste that delicious tea again. The protagonist shows his shopping basket and says that this time it won't be tea, but he can make a meal. Everyone is amazed by this great man's generosity, including Xiao Shui, who thinks that this man is really marriage material. They all sit down, excited, and the old man wonders why this is and tells his son that he will give those spirit stones from the bet because he never expected such a powerful veteran to live in their yard. Yunhai responds that at this moment, they don't care about the spirit stones. They all definitely want to taste that delicious tea, saying this while shouting, as his father doesn't understand what is so special about a simple tea. Suddenly he feels a powerful aura in front of him, causing his head to slam into the table. He looks forward, wondering what could cause such a powerful pressure. He wonders if what is in front of him is another legendary treasure. The sect leader makes it clear to his father that no one there dared to touch anything in the house, and he dared to touch them. The old man gets irritated, saying no one told him that before. He slams his head again and looks towards the kitchen, as a good smell is coming from there. The food is being prepared by the protagonist, and all he can imagine is how that pepper makes him want to sneeze, as it is suffocating. Xiao Shui notices the delicious smell of something being grilled, and the elder feels something strange happening in his body, and is happy because he apparently managed to break through just by smelling that delicious food. All 3 can't believe such an absurdity, and start inhaling the fragrance coming from the kitchen. The old man asks everyone to sniff carefully, as that aura is extremely pure. The girl wonders what is being fried since the air there is extremely pure, so it must be some divine dish. Chen announces that the food is ready, and everyone is invited to taste it. He will just get the rice first. The 4 cannot hide their expressions of astonishment at seeing that magnificent food. The protagonist wonders if everyone will be polite this time, looks to the side, and has a bad feeling about it. He gets the rice and is happy because he cooked a lot this time. He is shocked to see everyone devouring the food and wonders if all cultivators are like this. Even Xiao Shui was eating like a hungry animal, and he imagined she needed to pay attention to her image. After the meal, there was no rice left. The four were full and thanked Chen for his hospitality. Chen couldn't believe they even licked their plates clean. After the meal, everyone managed to break through. The elder advanced to the 8th stage of Yuanying. The old man not only broke through, but also reached the 1st stage of the divinity realm. Xiao Shui advanced to the 5th stage of Qi collection for the infant core. Lastly, Yunhai advanced to the 8th stage of Yuanying. The old man cried tears of joy, having finally broken through. He thought this would haunt him for the rest of his life. He immediately lay prostrate, telling Chen that he would never forget this immense kindness, even in the next life. The protagonist didn't understand what it all meant, and asked the old man to get up, as it wasn't something that deserved such gratitude. The old man stood up, happy, and asked if they could come back in the future for that delicious meal again. The protagonist closed his eyes, and then expelled everyone from his house, saying they needed to cultivate. Yunhai told his father that it was very embarrassing to ask for that so blatantly. The old man slapped his son's face, saying that the shameless one was him. The old man said he couldn't help it at the moment, and in his excitement he ended up saying something unnecessary. However, Chen has surreal powers, so who would imagine he would get angry over trivial things? Yunhai couldn't believe it, having not even eaten a grain of rice, while his father wanted to eat there every day. It's very shameless. The old man said that the great Chen asked everyone to leave to cultivate. This reminded them that greed cannot stabilize the cultivation base, so the strength gained this way is in vain. The elder and the sect master started laughing, while the old man shouted that everyone owed a lot to the ancestor. Xiao Shui was excited, understanding very well about owing something to the protagonist. Her grandfather was a bit thoughtful, wondering if she understood that correctly. He was momentarily speechless and asked the elder to tell everyone in the sect about the new ancestor. He responded that he understood and said he would go straight to the sect to pass on the news. At that moment, a voice entered Qingxian's mind, reminding him not to return to the sect. He looked up, saying he just heard his father's voice. The old man asked if his father used the 1,000 words of the secret voice technique. The elder said that was exactly it, but it worried him since this method of contact is only used in emergencies. This meant that the sect was under attack. A man was causing strong lightning strikes at the sect while telling Xiao Feng that he ended up with paralyzed legs, but no one imagined he would end up breaking through to the 1st stage of the divinity realm. Xiao Feng observed all the destruction and responded that it was necessary to leave him paralyzed because he had killed many people and deserved to be punished. The man asked if Xiao Feng was not afraid of dying. The old man responded that he had no problem with death, as God would bless the sect. He added that his son was not present at the sect that day, but would seek revenge when the time came. However, the elder appeared, telling his father that he had finally returned. Xiao Feng couldn't believe what was happening and became furious, arguing with his son, as he had made it clear that he was not to return to the sect. Qingshuan says it was unjustifiable for him not to return to the sect after such a significant event. Smiling, he adds that the intruder is only at the 1st stage of the divinity realm. Everyone falls silent at that moment, including his father, who is simply in disbelief. The intruder is also in shock, thinking they treat reaching this level as casually as eating cabbage every day. He adds that if they find someone at the divinity realm, he will call them Father immediately. At this moment, Murong approaches the intruder from behind and asks who he thinks he's calling cabbage. The frightened man turns around and asks who he is. The old man brings his hand close to the man's face and says that everything he did there is a great insult. Immediately, a huge flame begins to grow where they stand. Xiao Feng stands up and asks his son who that person is. He responds that the person is Uncle Murong, from the same realm. Murong returns to the ground and starts walking, asking what all this commotion was about. Xiao Feng asks if it's really the ancestor there, his old cultivation companion. The old man responds affirmatively, but it's a long story. He doesn't change his expression, as this long story is basically that he lost a bet, and by that luck ended up getting stronger. He explains that indeed there is a powerful immortal master living in a mortal city within their sect's jurisdiction, and after a delicious lunch with this master, he broke through the bottleneck. Xiao Feng is thoughtful, as it all sounds like fairy tales, but he grabs Murong's hand and asks him to take him to this powerful person urgently. The old man can't believe it and asks his friend if he simply believed this absurd story. Didn't it cross his mind that it might be a lie? The man responds that it's impossible since his son's power increased dramatically. Moreover, his friend Murong wouldn't tell such a lie, so it's easy to believe. The elder can't believe it, and wonders if he really is as worthless as his father said. Murong says he didn't expect that response. He explains that this powerful man descended to Earth, but lives with the mind of a simple mortal, and since they just left his house, it would be inconvenient to disturb him. Xiao Feng is disappointed and asks his friend if he will lie like that. Murong is now in disbelief, as he spoke so beautifully about their friendship just a moment ago. At this moment, they notice a strong tremor in the region. The elder asks what that earthquake sound is. His father responds that he's wrong. It's just a strong spiritual pressure approaching. Murong notices that all that pressure is directed towards the ancestors' residence. He grabs his friend's hand, asking to go check it out, and maybe after that, they can have dinner at the ancestors' house. He says this, and immediately uses the flying ability. Qingxuan is upset, as he was left behind when he wanted to travel with them. In Chen's yard, the phoenix looks up and says it's detecting problems. It also notices the two old men talking. Murong is upset, as it seems he won't be able to have dinner at Chen's house. Xiao Feng asks why he insists so much on dining there. After saying this, he looks up and notices that all the qi tremors were caused by the secret cave in the sky. He explains that such great power can lift an entire city off the ground and asks why the ancestor is doing this. Murong responds that it is impossible, since Master Chen cultivates as a mere mortal. He would never use his cultivation to do something as cruel as lifting an entire city off the ground. He steps back and asks them to leave, as there is no point in staying there, and they need to try to save as many people as possible while there is still time. His friend agrees. At that moment, a strong glow appears from the pond where the fish are. This catches their attention. Suddenly, a dragon's aura rises towards the sky. Its size is colossal, leaving the two old men terrified. The dragon heads towards the enormous secret cave in the sky and begins to devour it. Xiao Feng is in shock and still asks if that is really a dragon. He can't believe what he is seeing. Murong responds that it is, and even says that there is also a phoenix inside the ancestor's house. The man can't believe it and asks how it is possible for one person to command both the dragon and the king of beasts. This is impossible. They imagine that it would have to be an immortal emperor. In another location nearby, a portal opens, and a sword emerges from it. The sword has a life of its own, and is happy to have finally escaped to the mortal world. Apparently, the Blood Moon sect really wants him to apologize. The spirit in the sword says that although it is severely injured from the teleportation turbulence, its spiritual body is not damaged, so it should recover in about 100 years. At that moment, a person approaches and asks why there is a sword lying there on the ground. This person reaches out to pick it up. However, the sword thinks that if a mortal touches it, they will be immediately crushed by its powerful aura. He picks up the sword, and nothing happens. It was Chen, who is amazed at how beautiful the sword is. The spirit cannot believe how that person is fine after touching it. However, he looks closer at the person and notices the powerful energy overflowing from his body. He wonders what kind of entity that human is. Chen, fascinated by the sword, says he will take it home. The sword spirit, still trembling, wonders how a mortal can have such a powerful qi. There shouldn't be anyone that strong. The protagonist notices that the sword moved on its own and wonders if it is a magical weapon or something like that. He puts it on his back and imagines he could sell it for a good price. The sword can't believe how idiotic that guy is. The spirit starts to think that powerful people in the immortal world want to use it. He sees all those medicinal herbs and doesn't see anything special about that human, especially since Chen couldn't discern the sword's level. So the spirit is convinced that the guy is a simple mortal. Smiling, he imagines that his body was so damaged and reduced that it made it possible for that human to lift him. At that moment, the sword hears someone telling it to shut up. It was the hoe beside it, calling the sword an ant. Suddenly, the basket on the protagonist's back starts to shake all over, making him stop to see what it is. However, he doesn't notice anything unusual, but he is sure his basket moved quickly. The furious hoe orders the sword not to move a millimeter. Terrified, it responds affirmatively, still calling it boss. The sword, frightened, says that its assessment is not wrong. Definitely the power coming from that hoe is from a divine artifact. Chen looks up and notices strange movements in the clouds. Meanwhile, Murong and Xiao Feng fly quickly towards the enormous portal in the sky. They notice a beam of light coming from inside the portal and immediately shout for everyone to stop. The portal becomes denser until a strong beam of light emerges from it. From a distance, the protagonist sees a black hole in the sky with a beam of light coming from it. He wonders if this is the so-called secret realm he has heard about. At that moment, the system appears beside him and announces a new mission. He is thoughtful, hoping that this mission is not related to the black hole. Panicked, he asks if it's not to resolve the black hole issue. However, it is a lottery reminder. The system informs him that the lottery will expire in 5 hours, so he needs to use it as soon as possible. He is happy because he had forgotten about the task he completed earlier and did not claim the reward. Excited, he presses spin to draw the lottery. At least it's not related to the beam of light, the protagonist says. The spin button begins to glow, and a small portal appears above his head. Something falls from the portal, saying that the extraction is complete. The protagonist grabs it and notices that it is a bamboo flute. He is happy because this time he got something very good. He puts the flute in his basket and says that fortunately he learned to play it in his past life, so when he gets home, he will test it. The sword looks at the absurd power coming from the flute and asks if another artifact has arrived with them. The sword starts to sweat, seeing that the power from the flute is no joke, and this is absolutely impossible. Night finally falls, and the protagonist is exhausted, saying he will wash his face. The spirit in the sword is completely shocked by everything it sees inside the house. Absolutely everything inside is composed of divine artifacts. The sword imagines that it has been in the immortal world for thousands of years and has never witnessed such a scene. There is also a peach tree catching its attention, as it is holier than the saint and more divine than the immortal emperor. Furthermore, the fish are hundreds of times more powerful than the emperor's dragon, and the roosters are also hundreds of times more powerful than the emperor's phoenix. The flute angrily asks why the master picked up this piece of trash sword. The hoe, also furious, says that the damn sword has been talking nonsense, and if it weren't for the master picking it up, it would have been destroyed by now. The pan also makes it clear that if the damn sword dares to insult the master, it will die that very second. The sword, completely terrified, begs all the great elders inside to help it, as it is ignorant of the rules and asks them not to be angry. At this moment, the beam of light continues strong and steady, coming from the black hole. Xiao Shui is trying to help by gathering energy. She prepares her punch and hits the beam of light squarely. However, she starts to feel a lot of pain and notices that she almost broke her own hand. She says this while crying to her grandfather. Murong asks his granddaughter not to do such crazy things, as that beam of light is from the secret realm and as powerful as the second layer of the divinity realm. He wonders how it will be possible to enter that realm, perhaps using some secret word to open the passage. Xiao Feng says that figuring this out is very problematic and asks if they should seek help from the new ancestor. The old man responds that he understands the desire to find Chen. However, something so significant appeared in the sky, and yet he did not show up. This means he does not want to be disturbed. He shifts his gaze and says that probably the great Master Chen will appear later. His friend asks if he's sure about that. The beam of light grows even more powerful, frightening all three with the intense brightness it is emitting. Meanwhile, at the protagonist's house, that light is bothering him because he can't sleep. He starts complaining, saying that all he wants is to sleep, but that light is keeping him awake. At that moment, a powerful aura begins to emanate from the knife in the kitchen, declaring that it will stop what is interfering with its master's sleep. It is Chopper, who emerges from this powerful energy and begins to walk towards the exit to resolve the problem. Some time passes, and something begins to emerge from that enormous beam of light. Xiao Shui notices it and asks if it is the work of the ancestor. Murong, knowing what it is scared and says that it is just Chen's kitchen knife. Xiao Feng doesn't understand any of it, and doesn't understand why his friend is covering his face as if he's scared. Chopper approaches the enormous power, and is surprised that something of such magnitude has appeared in the mortal world. He starts concentrating, imagining that this is not so rare in the immortal world. He raises his finger and says it's a shame because in front of a powerful spirit, it's nothing. He uses his power in the form of a laser, making that beam of light disappear once and for all. The power heads straight towards the blue light, making Chopper think he worried for nothing since it turned out to be just garbage. The power creates a hole in the beam of light, making it explode completely. This creates a powerful gust of wind, blowing everything away. The three stand before a ball of energy. That is the secret realm. Something is chained. It is a girl with several chains around her body. She opens her eyes and then stands up, seeing that her chains have been destroyed. This catches Chopper's attention. Xiao Shui is excited that the beam of light has opened, so there must be something good inside. Xiao Feng asks them to wait a moment, as something bad is coming. They notice a diabolical aura emerging from the ball of energy formed by the beam of light. A hand starts to come out of it, making Chopper curious. The girl steps on the ground and asks if this is the Tianyuan realm. Murong is shocked, imagining that the girl is an immortal from the immortal realm. It seems that such a large secret realm was used as a cage to imprison her. He turns and says they need to meet another immortal. Xiao Feng is furious, saying this is no time for jokes. The girl approaches her grandfather and asks what they should do now. He responds that there is not much they can do since it is impossible to escape from an immortal fairy. They look to Chopper, imagining he is their only hope. Chopper shouts at the girl, calling her a little girl. He approaches and asks her to identify herself. The girl turns, steps on the ground, and jumps towards the spirit, telling him to die. Chopper laughs and says cheap tricks don't work on him. He says this and uses his ability Cease. The girl's punch slows down until she is completely stopped in a magic circle. He asks the girl, "Since when is an Origin Realm immortal worthy of shouting in front of me?" Still smiling, he says that cultivators from the Immortal Emperor realm are all old trash. Murong is completely paralyzed upon hearing that the Immortal Emperor realm is all trash. His friend is also in shock and asks what the Ancestors realm is after all. Chopper approaches the girl and uses his ability to understand why she went mad in this way. The light in front of her grows increasingly brighter until she begins to see herself as a child. A huge shadow stood before her until it delivered a powerful blow to her chest. Chopper feels sad seeing those memories and begins to reduce the power on the girl's forehead. He turns and shouts to everyone present, ordering them not to tell anyone about what happened there. He grabs the girl and makes it clear that they should imagine the consequences if they do. Murong immediately says that as a mere subordinate, he understood well what was commanded. Chopper flies off with the woman, and Murong says that the ancestor Chen probably just wants to investigate the girl's identity, so they must not disturb him at all. The old man asks Xiao Shui if she understands the importance of keeping that secret. After all, anyone who dares to talk about this event will be killed immediately, and running away will not help at all. The frightened girl says she understands, but it will be difficult to hide it since many people were present, and the place was completely destroyed. Chopper returns to the house, and upon entering, the Phoenix questions him about why he brought the girl along. He goes to the peach tree and says he will leave her with it, as he needs to leave. A strong aura begins to emanate from the tree, and a spirit emerges from it. The woman is shocked to see the girl's memories, and says that an unrelenting immortal had the cruelty to do this to a 6-year-old child. She begins to gather energy in her hand, and a flower gradually appears, finally blooming. The flower falls and heads towards the girl's forehead. An enormous spell envelops her entire body, causing a huge aura to emerge before her. The sword observes from a distance and asks what the hell is happening. He is then startled to see that the person is the daughter of the immortal emperor. It is definitely Suling. After this, the girl finally opens her eyes. The peach tree and the phoenix find her extremely cute. Suling stands up and asks where she is. The peach tree spirit approaches and casts a spell on her, saying that from now on, this is her home. The sword, hiding, hears the spirit telling the girl to start calling the young master her older brother. The sword is sure that the immortal emperor will not stand idle regarding this. At this moment, in the immortal realm, a talisman informs that the power of the secret realm has been destroyed. The immortal emperor, seeing this, asks who the hell destroyed the secret realm he created so Suling could recover. He immediately mobilizes his 3 soldiers to rescue his daughter. The 3 promptly appear, saying they are at the emperor's disposal. He orders them to notify all the powers in the celestial court to go to Earth and find his daughter. They respond affirmatively and set out on this mission. Dawn is breaking at the protagonist's house. He is relieved to have slept peacefully, noting it has been a long time since he managed to sleep so well. At that moment, Suling approaches the bed. She raises her hand and starts poking the protagonist, calling him brother and asking him to wake up. The protagonist opens his eyes and, not understanding anything, notices a girl on top of him, saying that the sun is already out. He's completely startled, asking who the hell she is and why she is calling him brother. She responds that her name is Suling and that this is her home. He doesn't understand at all what this means. Maybe the girl is saying she lives in the small village, but it's strange that he never noticed such a cute little girl living there in recent years. He decides to get out of bed and puts his hand on the girl's head, saying it's okay to be her older brother, but they will go out to find her parents. She responds that it's fine. He makes it clear that she needs to follow him so she doesn't get lost again. She grabs the protagonist's hand and asks if she's doing it right. He smiles and says, yes, she is. He asks her to show him where her house is after they go to town. She responds that it's fine. However, as time passes, she says that house is hers. He is frustrated because the girl is pointing to his house. He wonders how they ended up back at his house. He asks his little sister if she remembers her parents' faces. Suling says no, she only remembers the Peach Sister. Immediately, the Peachtree spirit realizes the girl's mistake in revealing this and throws a stone, hitting her squarely on the head. She crouches down, complaining of a headache, and the protagonist, not understanding anything, asks if she's okay. Confused, he imagines that the girl was wandering around the city and got lost from her family. After that, she must have fallen somewhere and hit her head, causing her to lose her memory. She starts crying and asks her brother if he doesn't want to stay with her. Embarrassed, he says that's not it. He thinks he will have to take care of her until he finds her real parents. At that moment, he hears someone talking outside the door. He opens it and sees that Murong is accompanied by another person and asks what they want. The old man explains that this person beside him is an old friend and wanted to meet the ancestor, which is why they are there. Xiaofeng bows and greets the protagonist. Immediately, he notices that this man is really powerful, as Murong mentioned. In his view, a terrifying aura emanates from Chen's body.
If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and like the video. Thank you.